live and direct with you guys. We're going to talk about Stephen Fulton versus Brandon Figueroa. That was the Showtime fight that occurred on Showtime. I'll also talk about Triller and their triad, which is boxing versus MMA triad competition that also happened. We'll also talk about that. But first, let's talk about Stephen Fulton versus Brandon Figueroa. This was a unification fight at super bantamweight. Stephen Fulton was the WBO champion. Brandon Figueroa was the WBC champion. He also was the WBA champion, but he got stripped of the WBA title, unfortunately for him. Now, let me go into what both of these fighters bring to the table in terms of skills and abilities. A lot of people think Brandon Figueroa is just even Omar Figueroa, that they just tough guys that go in there and put a lot of pressure on fighters and take a lot of punches and win fights. And they're just brawlers, they're just sluggers. But that's not the case. Both Omar and Brandon Figueroa are shifters. And Brandon Figueroa brings one more thing to the table. He's also a southpaw. So when they're putting pressure on you, they can jab with either hand. Either hand can become their lead hand once they shift stance. Now that makes it very difficult because with the orthodox fighter, we are trained to throw punches for certain people in certain stances. A shifter, by shifting their weight, like Canelo shifting his waist, okay, can take a lot of steam off of certain punches. And the other thing is Brandon Figueroa's long, he's rangy, but he can also collapse his arms and get really great leverage on the inside. So when he's jabbing, he can catch you with a jab from either hand. So for example, if I'm Brandon Figueroa, I'm in the southpaw stance. I throw my jab from the southpaw stance and then I shift across here. I can throw another jab from the orthodox stance. Okay, so let me do it here. So I'm here, I'm stalking you, I throw my jab, bop, bop, but then I can shift and throw my now I have a different jabbing hand, but I can reach you even more by shifting. So it makes for a very interesting pressure style because now he doesn't even have to square up and cut you off. He just has to shift at an appropriate time, and his reach gets longer because of that, and he can get to guys where normally you wouldn't get to a guy in the stance that you are in. Also allows him to deflect certain punches that might be coming at him to his head or whatever, because once you move with the shift, you can deflect the punch, take steam off a punch, ride certain punches. So it's a very interesting style that goes all the way back to early boxing days. Okay, all the way back to early boxing, guys, you shift. But the art of shifting has sort of gone away a bit. Another guy who did it, but he didn't do so great, was the 154 pounder. I'm trying to remember his name right now. He was the 154 pound unified champion. He didn't do it so good because sometimes he crossed his legs, but he was also a shifter. Of course, Gennady Golovkin's also a shifter. And we've seen boxers, like Terry Norris, use the shifting technique to mostly shift. Mike Tyson shifted as well, to shift to get to the weak side of an opponent. So you would just do a quick shift out of your stance. You may go southpaw or orthodox. So for example, I'm in the orthodox stance here, but I might shift to the side of my opponent to land a left hook. Okay, so I may be here watching you and then just slide here, because maybe what happened is I'm watching you here, you threw your lead right hand at me, and so I slipped off to the side of your right hand to hit you with a left hook. That's shifting, because I changed my stance. I'm actually southpaw at that point in time. Now, having said that, in boxing, there's a lot of things that go on in boxing. Like I said, there are many different stances, many different styles. But in boxing, there's a lot to it, right? So when you see a fighter being very effective, Take, for instance, the great Julio Cesar Chavez, for example, who was a body puncher. You have to ask yourself, what makes this fighter effective? How is this fighter able? Take, for example, Brandon Figueroa. Go through Luis Neri. He's going through some really good fighters, to win belts. He won the WBA belt by beating Luis Neri. How did he manage to do that? How was he able to close the distance to get at his opponents? You can't just write off a fighter and say, oh, he's just a brawler or a banger. You have to understand what it is these fighters are doing that make them so successful. Stephen Fulton did due diligence. He understood that to fight a guy like Brandon Figueroa, you got to, first of all, have the heart and desire and want to win. It's all about the tenacity and desire to win, because he's going to get you at a point in the fight where you're going to have to fight him on the inside, and it's sort of a battle of attrition to some degree. So Stephen Fulton understood that. He understood he had to have a good inside game. He also understood that, and I listened to them in the interviews, he understood that this is about wanting to win and making sure you have the sharpened tools to be able to do it. Yes, it's the skills, it's the tools, it's the smart, like he said, but it's more importantly your desire to win. How far are you willing to go to win? So, bearing that in mind, this fight really went the way how Stephen Fulton was talking about it in the build-up to it. Stephen Fulton engaged pretty early in the fight Brandon Figueroa on the inside. And then his trainer, his coach, understood something. He understood that Brandon Figueroa is great coming forward, but it really ain't that great going backwards. So he wanted Stephen Fulton to be in his chest and to push him backwards towards the ropes. So as the fight progressed, I'm just giving you just a general concept of it. Stephen Fulton was trying his best to push Brandon Figueroa back. Brandon Figueroa still needs some kind of space to throw punches, and Fulton wasn't giving him that space. However, one of the things Fulton did not anticipate was how well Brandon Figueroa uses his shoulders. He can use his shoulders and his forearm to push you back, and he really does it in an excellent way. So I'm going to show you. So Brandon Figueroa, he's leaning in, obviously. He's a tall fighter, long, rangy, he's strong. Yes, he can take punches as well because he's probably way up from that weight class. Stephen Fulton himself is probably way up from that weight class. They shrink down in weight to make weight. But more importantly, Brandon Figueroa uses his shoulders and forearms to push his fighter off of him. So he can push the fighter off of him this way, and he can also maneuver the fighter. So he'll catch you with a body shot. Say he'll throw a nice sharp left hook, whoop, and push you off with the forearm at the same time. So he hits you with the shot and pushes you off with the forearm, and then he keeps on working you and pushing you off with the forearm. And he will use his shoulders as well to push you off. So he can push with the shoulder and then extend it with the forearm. And he's pushing you back that way. And Stephen Fulton realized that, and he pushes you underneath your neck. He'll give you a little nudge with the shoulder, and then the forearm will move to push you back. And he gradually pushes you back while he's throwing his combinations, hitting you with shots and opening you up. Sometimes he'll push, he'll needle out your arm to get underneath the arm to hit you with a body shot and stuff like that. So he's really actually a very skilled fighter, Brandon Figueroa, in what he does. What he does very well. However, whenever Fulton could get the lower ground and use his shoulder and his body and his head and get his head in his chest, he could push him back. What Fulton did on the inside, which I thought was quite brilliant, was he kept himself tight and tucked like this. And then he'd shoot the shots straight up the center. Straight up the center, he'd shoot the shots. So he's nice and tucked, so he can protect the body, even though Figueroa will still needle him with the forearm again. He needle him with the forearm to get underneath the shot. Or you wait till he time him, so you throw those little shots. Now, Fulton wasn't trying to go for full-blown power all the time. And the thing about Figueroa is he likes to counter a guy who's countering him on the inside. So if you throw a left hook, you're open for a left hook. So he will try and counter you with the left hook at the same time, or some other punch. But the key here is Figueroa's jab was a very big issue, and the way how he used his lead hands. Either hand could become a lead. He could sometimes shift himself, and then the hand become a lead. So it was a really interesting fight when we were watching. Okay, so I don't want to go into too much more technicality except to say that I thought that this fight was very intriguing. I picked Stephen Fulton to win this fight in groups and in other places. I thought he was going to win. I did listen to Gary Russell Jr. what he said about the fight, and that he thought that Stephen Fulton didn't have the power to really keep, to really, really put something on, Figueroa, because he's a big, strong guy. But he still wanted to see how the fight would progress. And the thing about it is, there are two things I want to tell people. Now, it doesn't always work, but it's one of those things you need to do. Sometimes, and it worked for Tyson Fury, it worked for several other fighters. Sometimes it's not good to run away from the fire. Sometimes it's good to run to the fire. Of course, you got to know what you're doing. You got to know what you're doing. You make sure you got the proper protective clothing, which is the defense, to run to the fire. But nonetheless, you must run to the fire. Now, in the case of Brandon Figueroa, who loves to fight in the pocket, you need to go to the pocket like how Stephen Fulton was, and he tried to cover up much, catch a lot of shots, block a lot of shots, move his body to catch a lot of shots. Now, he was on the ropes quite a lot, and his trainer, coach, did not like that. He said, man, you need to keep it in the center of the ring or push this guy back. However, it wasn't easy for Stephen Fulton to push him back because Figueroa's a big dude. It's not easy to push him back, and he would have wasted a lot of energy just doing that. So what Stephen Fulton did was a combination of things. He would box Brandon Figueroa sometimes. Sometimes it's on the ropes. Sometimes he boxed him in the center of the ring by pivoting. But he knew he had to trade with him, so he had to fight him in the center of the ring. So Figueroa was the better inside fighter of the two, but Fulton was holding his own and keeping his defense pretty tight. So whereas Figueroa threw a lot of shots, way more shots than Stephen Fulton did, Stephen Fulton was much more accurate with his shots. His shots would land on the inside, on the head of Figueroa, etc. So what ultimately happened in the end is Stephen Fulton, he mixed up different things. He had different approaches, whereas Figueroa had basically one approach. And because of his versatility, Stephen Fulton was able to pull out the 11th and 12th rounds, boxing Figueroa most of the time, keeping his defense as tight as he could. He's still getting hit with certain shots, but mostly not clean, and mostly not the money punches, even though Figueroa did land one or two really good left hooks and little good body punches. Now I listened to Gary Russell Jr. again in an interview, shout out to Fight Hype and Sean Sattel, where Figueroa spoke about how, Gary Russell Jr., I believe, spoke about how Figueroa, body punches people don't really look at body punches unless you hurt somebody or whatever. Now, I don't agree with Gary Russell on that one. I think body punches are very important in boxing. And if you're hitting a guy to the body and he's not responding, it seems like he's not responding, just wait till later on in the fight when you're hitting him in the same spot. Okay, Teofimo Lopez, he did the right thing. He tried to go to the body. Sometimes he even put up his guard like if he was going to do a high guard, but he didn't really use a high guard. It was like a pseudo guard. But nonetheless, going to the body is not something bad. And especially if you're throwing left hooks to the body and hard body punches as hard as you can. Because it does pay off in the long run. Maybe not in 12 rounds. Maybe the guy slows down a little bit. But it's very good to throw body punches. Now, having said that, what Gary Russell's speaking about is what's called effectiveness. So what Gary Russell was saying is, yeah, maybe this guy, you guys are applauding this guy for throwing a lot of body punches. I can't remember what fight Sean Sattel was bringing up. But he was saying, you could throw a lot of body punches, but are they being effective? That's what Gary Russell was basically saying. So he was saying, did you hurt the guy? Did you drop him? If you didn't, then it's the headshots we look at. But I wouldn't say that. I would say you have to go to the body for the head to fall. In my opinion, you set up headshots with body shots anyway, which is what John Sattel then said, well, maybe he can misdirect so he can set up the headshot. And Gary Russell Jr. was like, sure. But my point anyway is body work is very important. And guys have been taken out with body punches and so on. Work on your body work game. Anybody in the boxing business, in the boxing scene, don't let nobody fool you. Now, but do understand it's all about effective punches. So if you're landing a whole bunch of body shots on a guy and it don't look like he's going nowhere or he's slowing down or he's tiring, then it means you're ineffective with your body shots. But it's still a good thing to throw, and if you can land them, go for it. Just remember, as much as you may be a good body puncher, you have to protect yourself. You must have proper defense, because if you go to the body, the guy who has his hands up like this, he can easily counter you to the head. Like I was listening to who was it? Which was really interesting. Someone was talking about something. Oh yes, Coach Anthony. Shout out to Coach Anthony and his channel. And he was saying it's all about confidence, because to every shot that you throw in boxing, there is a counter for it. But just because there's a counter for something doesn't mean that you don't show confidence and go after whatever it is that you're going after. Shout out to Leroy Khan. What's up, man? Leroy Khan. Shout out to you, brother. I'm on my 3rd channel. How many channels do you have, bro? That's funny. Anyways, man. We need to do a little chop up on the Snyder Cut. It's coming. Sorry, not the Snyder Cut. Restore the Snyderverse, baby. Restore the Snyderverse. We gotta chop it up. I'm gonna come up with a stream just now. You hop on that stream. It's happening, y'all. It's happening. 3. I see. I'm gonna be out there in just a minute. Shout out to everybody. By the way, what you need is a channel that you can donate to if you like what I do. If you want to support the channel, feel free to donate to the channel as well. I can put my PayPal somewhere on the channel. I have a PayPal, so you guys can donate to the PayPal, and that will be that, right? If you want to donate to this channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting my PayPal up so you guys can donate to it through PayPal. That's the way I'll do it from here on in, and you guys can do whatever you want after that. But yeah, what you need, man. We've been trying to give you what you need in boxing, as you guys know. I'm hoping this is what you need channel. I need to check and see. But hold on a second. I believe so. Hold on a second. I'm trying to find out. Because I don't know where I am. Cool, just checking. Yeah, what you need in the building. Yeah, so Stephen Fulton was dealing with that. He was dealing with a shifter, but he realized one of the Achilles heels of the shifter was pushing him back. So this is what Fulton did. There's a couple things he did which I thought were very effective and very smart. He wasn't the bigger fighter in this fight. So what he did was this. What he did was he would sometimes box Figueroa and make Figueroa have to turn and pivot quite a lot. Okay? And he would counterpunch him, and he hit him flush to the head, to the body. But then, at certain points in the fight, he would tie up Figueroa and walk him to the ropes, head in his chest. Once you have your head in the boxer's chest, so if I did this way, my chin's tucked, and I put my head in your chest, and I'm walking you to the ropes. Okay, I'll walk you to the ropes. Okay, but Figueroa's so strong, and he himself also can dip low. Figueroa has a way of getting his forearm in between you, so you can't keep your head down like that. Or he has his forearm which he extends and pushes you back while he's punching you. So while he's punching you, one hand is manipulating you or maneuvering you, and the other hand is punching you. So I find that very brilliant. It's a different way of fighting. And Figueroa doesn't really get hit flush. He can take a punch because he's a big, strong dude. He's very, very big for that weight class. So all of those things were really good points. But what I like about it, Fulton did two things. He pushed back Figueroa by physically pushing him back, by walking him back in a clinch. He'd walk him back to the ropes, and they, tie up and punch and tie up and punch. The other thing he did, which I thought was very brilliant, he came straight down the center. So he would throw more straight punches down the center so he could protect his defense when he was there, and try to take the lower ground so he could get under Figueroa so he could push him back. He tried to push him back a couple times. It was not easy to push back Figueroa. And the other thing about Fulton was sometimes, and this is something Fulton needs to think about, when you're inside the kitchen sink, you need to stay in there. Don't pull your head back and pull out, because then you give Figueroa the distance to throw his jabs. And he did it a number of times, and that's how Figueroa pushed him back to the ropes. So he has to think about that as well. But the other thing he did, which I thought was very smart, was, again, he used the ring. He would box Figueroa in the center, or he would box him off the ropes, moving at different angles. And there were times where he said he would have used too much energy, so sometimes he fought him in the pocket, and then sometimes he boxed him. And so what you found was he was boxing him, he was fighting him in the pocket, and he was pushing him to the ropes, physically pushing him to the ropes. That's a mental game that he's trying to do. Of course, Figueroa was just relentless, did his thing, did what Figueroa does best, but he wasn't able to get the results because he wasn't catching Fulton as much and as flush, because Fulton would ride and roll punches and block punches and all of that stuff. So Fulton was pretty fresh at the end of the fight as well. Used his defense, boxed him in the 11th and 12th round, was fighting him toe-to-toe, more or less for the better part of the fight. So the fight was pretty close. I think what separated the fight was the 11th and 12th round when he boxed him. He boxed him also early on in the fight, but then he knew he had to stay and go toe-to-toe. So even though Figueroa was the better fighter on the inside, he wasn't really landing as much clean shots as he wanted to. Fulton's defense came into play, and he was countering Figueroa. Figueroa, though, would catch him with some combinations of shots, and certain shots which were just, quite beautiful to watch, because how he worked his forearms and how he worked the shots off of, the work. Because Fulton was riding and rolling some of the punches, catching some of the punches. He did hurt Figueroa in the 10th, I believe it was, or the 10th or the 11th round. He hurt Figueroa, and Figueroa wasn't throwing nothing for a minute or so. Figueroa, I think, hurt him a couple times, but not nothing that he couldn't get back into control with. Beautiful ebb and flow. Fulton's open to a rematch. I love Stephen Fulton because I know Stephen Fulton is looking to unify the division. He's talking about facing MJ next. So that's the guy that we want to see if he will face next if Figueroa doesn't want the rematch. Figueroa definitely wants the rematch. Just like Teofimo Lopez, he's kind of sore that he lost. Again, the first loss is always a hard one, the hardest one. But I guess he'll get over it and he will move forward. A lot of people saying fighters like Figueroa and Teofimo Lopez, do you think they'll rebound from their losses? Will they do well as fighters? Absolutely. These are guys that will continue to do well with their styles. But Figueroa have to work on, he's got to go back to the drawing board and work on certain kinks in his style to make sure his style is better. Like, for example, he's going to have to do something about the fact that his style does not allow him to really fight and throw punches going backwards. So he's going to have to do something about that. You can't just have a style where, again, the thing with boxing, right, is the more all-around a fighter you are, is the better it's going to be for you. Because if you have some kind of limitation in your boxing, you have to work on that limitation. You have to work on your weaknesses. You can't just focus on your strengths. You have to work on your weaknesses. Andre Ward wasn't a great inside fighter. He wanted to just box and move around the ring. And Virgil Hill made sure that he learned how to infight. And that's what really defined Andre Ward's career and made him the fighter that he was. Andre Ward wasn't great at infighting. He wasn't the greatest infighter ever. He wasn't great at anything, to be honest with you. He was very good in, had a great jab, knew how to work off his jab, didn't have a great right hand for a long time because his right hand was messed up. But he knew how to do certain things that the other fighters were not good at doing. And therefore, in those situations, he was able to make those fighters uncomfortable, and he was able to function in it because he himself at one time was very uncomfortable fighting those kinds of fights. And those kinds of fights came in handy for a guy who could actually fight inside. And then if you can fight inside, but you can't fight outside, then I got it right there. And if Andre Ward did face a fighter who could do all those attributes, he constantly worked on his attributes so that he was a better outside boxer or a better inside fighter than that guy. And then he would use the situation because the guy is not going to be better than him in both. So one of them he's going to be better in. That's where Andre would sit into whatever he was better at and stay there. So the key to boxing is to be as all-around a fighter as you can be. to learn those skills. Remember, skills are learned, skills are taught. So the more skills you can have under your chin, the better. And here's another thing. They say you got to be, some fighters have natural ability and so on. And, they were born God gifted with certain things. That might be so. But I'm going to tell you this. And I'm going to give a shout out to Coach Eric Bradley. I'm going to give a shout out to Barry Robinson, because they have systems to help you develop as a fighter, to have that all-around consistency that is necessary for boxing. You must be prepared for every single situation. Knockdowns. Prepare for a situation where you get cut. You got to be prepared for situations where you get damage in the eye and you can't see in your eye for whatever reason. You have to be prepared for situations where, let's say you get a rotator cuff injury and in the middle of a fight and you can't use your arm. You must be able to use the other arm, whether it's your power arm that's all you got, or you got a jabbing arm and that's all you got. You got to be prepared for situations where you break both knuckles in your hands, and now both your wrists and your arms, and you still have to use the lever to deal those punches to people. Okay, you have to deal with situations where you get badly hurt in a fight and you have to recover. You have to know what to do in a fight to recover. See, all of these things are very important. Even if you're all you got in boxing, all your skill in boxing is that you find yourself as somebody who has good power. Let's say that's not a skill. So let's go with a skill. Let's say you have a good right hand. You know how to throw your right hand, Deontay Wilder style, right? You got a good right hand. You got to know when to throw that good right hand. You got to know how to throw that good right hand, right? And more importantly, you have to set up situations so that you can do that. And the rest of it, you better learn how to use defense. You better have good defense and try to develop your skills in having a good jab. Okay? So in boxing, even if you are a limited fighter, you have to be very good at what you're limited in, yes. But in the meantime, try to amass skills and incorporate it in your style. You may not be quick twitch. I'm not quick twitch. You may not be you may not be the guy with the most fancy footwork and flashy, okay? But you need to have the fundamentals and be able to use those fundamentals at any range. This is the most important thing in boxing. And then work on your craft, work on your foot speed, work on your power, work on your angles, work on your, and the repetition is the key. Repetition is the key. Coach Barry Robinson will tell you that. So the key to this thing, especially in modern day boxing, is repetition. Now, back in the day, just to bring this to the table, and I'm gonna call it a day. But back in the day, boxers used to fight a lot often. But I always said this: boxers today are sharper than boxers of the past. Yes, they have a certain catalog of skill sets that they have, but what they do really, 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 really well. And that's a very important point. And if you cover all your bases, you have an all-round basis of skills, that's tremendous. And so, yes, the fighters to pass for more regularly, so they'll be more fluent in what they do. They'll see more flowing. But the boxers today are much more sharper. They're sharper than the boxers of the past, and they play more chess than the boxers of the past. No doubt about it. It's more chess play than it is of the past. Still exciting fights, but not as much action. The guys back in the day, they flowed more and they had more action. Now, here's the other thing that a lot of people don't realize. You can fight very often, and because you're not working on individual things, you're not sharpening specific skill sets, specific techniques, you're not as sharp as a guy who fights less often, higher quality fights, and in the meantime he spars, but he's always working on certain skill sets, what he's deficient in and so on. So he's improving constantly as a fighter. He's not having as many fights, but when he does have fights, he's using the things that he's been sharpening so that he's sharper with every single fight. And that's different. Boxing has become more structured and more organized, and a lot of people do not appreciate it. They do not appreciate it because the fights are not as exciting as, say, the fights of the 60s or the 70s or the 80s. And I'm not saying that the guys in the 60s, 70s, and the 80s weren't great. In fact, when I look at some of the fights from the 60s, fantastic to and fro's, fantastic little slick moves and stuff, but still not as sharp as the guys today. And I keep on saying, boxing as a sport evolves. And if anybody's ever watched my channel, you will know that change happens with every single sport. And there are people who are proponents of the present era, and there are people who are proponents of the past. And let me just make it abundantly clear, I am balanced. I am a balanced person. What you need will give you a balanced perspective, because what you need actually loves boxing. He's not really such a fan of any one boxer that he's going to go, loco over any one boxer. Okay, but if a boxer's good and his name's been out there for a while, like Canelo or Floyd or Andrew Ward or Shakur Stevenson or Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence, etc., I'm gonna bring them up. Tyson Fury or Lomachenko or Alexander Usyk. I'm gonna bring them up. Okay, I'm gonna bring them up. And don't feel that I'm a fanboy or something. It's because I want to show you guys the techniques, the skills, and the abilities of these fighters. And again, Jerome Ennis is the next. And another thing, the boxers of the past, great stuff. This is where you can also look at footage. You can learn certain things, watch certain things, ask people, trainers, whatever, people around you, how these boxers were able to carry out certain things and do certain things. There's nothing wrong with that. And also another thing, do understand boxers, they have a legacy. So that after they're finished and done, you see their fights and everything, and you can see, oh, this is why this guy was so great in his time. This is very important to understand, because you need to understand what makes a guy separate himself from everybody else and become great. Why is he a step ahead of everybody in his era? This is very important. And this is not just important for people who are in boxing, but people also in life. What separates a great person from everybody else, or greatness, what people can esteem as greatness? And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be great and esteeming things as greatness, and so on and so on and so on. Now, a lot of us as boxing fans, let's be real, we have never even attained anything on the level of that. Some of us have. And the other thing about it is, we have to understand, respect boxers. I think a lot of us don't really have that respect because we've never stepped into a ring. We've never really done this sport. I was on a panel just recently, and some of the guys were saying some things that I didn't really personally agree with. But everybody was respectful on the panel at a certain point, and I really enjoyed that. And there's nothing wrong with people talking their mind, talking their heart, speaking their heart. That's great. You have opinions. Everybody have opinions. My thing is, on these panels, and I love it, is that when I hear people speaking things that just make sense. And I'm glad to have been on that panel with Joe Habib. Shout out to him. We were on the panel just recently. They were talking about Teofimo Lopez versus George Kambosos. And again, at first it wasn't respectful, but then it became respectful when the guy started responding and demanding his respect. And I think, we need to respect each other as we talk. Even if somebody says something that seems outlandish, let's hear their reasoning and their rationale behind it. And I think that's a very important thing today. And yes, there's some things that I laugh about, but you know what? We as boxing fans need to laugh about things. And even if we laugh, we want to still hear the reasoning, and we want to hear the person out, because maybe sometimes their reasoning is great. You know what I mean? And it's just something that slipped us, or we didn't understand and see it through those lenses. So let's give each other a chance in social media. I was on a Facebook group recently, and I put out a post, and a lot of people went loco. They lost their minds because it was about the great fighter, Marvelous Marvin Hagler. And there are there are a lot of Mike Tyson fans out there, and there are a lot of Marvin Hagler fans out there. I can tell you that. And the fans, they did not take too kindly to my statements, even though they're not irrational statements. Okay, they're not irrational statements at all. But because people may be fans of a certain fighter, and religiously they may even want to come to fisticuffs with you. They want to beat you up for saying certain things about certain fighters, which to me is very hilarious and entertaining. But quite frankly, what I'm trying to say to you guys is that in the sport of boxing, people are entitled to their opinions, and they don't have to be correct opinions, but at the same time, if you can give some sort of rational reasoning, then we can debate those opinions. And debating opinions, you can throw in things and say funny stuff, and even sometimes in the banter, you get kind of argumentative, but it never should go to blows. It's an argument. It's an argument. It's a discussion. All right, people need to mellow out and chill out a little bit. We need to chill out as people. I mean, I've been fisticuffs and cursing out people and stuff too. Don't get it twisted. I've been on my madness rant, but at the end of the day, it's really about discussion. It's about amicable discussion as much as possible. We're a boxing fan, and if you're a fan of a boxer, you should be proud to say you're a fan of a boxer. I talk about fanboyism, and the only reason I say fanboyism, again, we're all fans here. Fanboyism just simply means sometimes people just say things and they're very logical and emotional about fighters, and they really ain't got no reasoning behind it. So I call it fanboyism, and they even tell untruths about other fighters and try to degrade other fighters to put their fighter up. I don't believe in that. Okay, I think that's destructive, but there's nothing wrong with being a fan of a fighter. There's nothing wrong with being fans of many fighters. Why can't you be a fan of fighters? You like what they do. You like their style. You may even like how they carry themselves. Nothing's wrong with that. So, and fanboyism is not necessarily a bad thing. There are caustic fanboys, and then there's fanboys who love the fighter, and they love the fighter. They love the fighter. What's wrong with that? People need to understand something. You got all kinds in the world, and we need to accept each other for what it is. If you're not doing something that's destructive, that's hurting other people, and you're trying to hurt, you literally threaten people and go to their homes and kill them or whatever. If you're not that kind of person, in combat sport, there's a certain combat language, and that's okay as well. And it's all fun. It's all fun. It's supposed to be fun. So don't be so steamed or mad or trip out that it's just fun. We're just on YouTube. This is YouTube. We're just on YouTube channels talking, okay, about boxing. So don't take it too personally. Like, it's just fun. We're just having fun. We're fans. We get the fun part. We get to watch the sport. We get to enjoy the sport. We get to enjoy the fights, the matches. We get to break them down. We get to do whatever the hell we want to do, because we're not the actual ones fighting. Okay, the hard work is fighting. So we shouldn't trip out. Fans shouldn't trip out over under fans and want to come fist the cuffs. I know people are very passionate about what it is, but there's no reason to go fist the cuffs. You can back your fighter, say they're the greatest fighter in the world, raise your thing. You can do your thing. It's nothing wrong with that. Okay, but when I'm having debates and discussions with other fans and stuff, sometimes we have debates and discussions, and I want to help people to be able to see the sport beyond, the superficial way how the sport is looked at. That's all I'm saying. Educated boxing fans, it's not bad. It's not bad to know more about something and even to do it. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's all what you need is here to do. So, yeah, back to what we were saying here. Thank you for the love, by the way, you guys spread to this channel. I'm going over to the other channel in a minute, talk movies. But in the meantime, I would like you guys to subscribe if you haven't subscribed to the channel, if you like what you're seeing. Some people that watch my channel are people who are in the business, and they're in the business of boxing, and that's awesome. Shout out to you guys, respect to you guys. As you know, what you need is a guy that has been all over the place. So he's been extremes of emotion and all kinds of stuff. But it happens to everybody. And you just document it on video. It is what it is. But it's good, because when you look back, you say, oh my goodness, this is what I was. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed about that guy. You keep it on record. I'm going to tell you why you keep these things on record. To remember how far you came from and where you are now. So everybody develops, everybody grows. We're not super judgmental about each other. When I look at my dude, Stephen Fulton, who I really like him as a fighter. I like how he wants to take on all comers. I like that he's looking to unify all the titles. I like that he will go about trying to defend his titles afterwards. So I really like Stephen Fulton. He's so far shown himself to be a real one. When I look at guys like JoJo Diaz, who've taken on just about every tough challenge that's out there. He take on anybody. He take on anybody. He a real one. I like JoJo. You know. Um, so we'll see what happens with Karambosis. Looks like Karambosis wants to unify with Devin Haney and become undisputed. He really wants to become undisputed champion. Karambosis, he's not the hardest puncher in the world, but he a dog, man. He a dog, and he's tough. So, I mean, of the two, I think Tio still has the sharper skills. I think he was a stronger puncher, but I just think Kambosos just wanted it so much more. He wanted it so much more. And wanting it more is what allows you to win. Okay, wants you to win. He took some shots. Kambosos took some shots. Don't get it wrong. Teofimo Lopez put him down in the 10th. Let's not forget that. He took some shots. He went through some fire to do what he wanted to do, but he would just not be deterred. And Kambosos, I hope, will keep that same energy. I hope he's clearly going to do that because he's going back to Las Vegas to train. After this fight, he'll heal up. Probably you need to pace yourself, Kambosos. Don't burn yourself out, but at the same time, keep that hunger, keep that fire, bro, because that'll make it for a great fight. And now I don't know who you're gonna face next. We're gonna see if Devin Haney can get past Jojo Diaz. They talking about Devin Haney got some more punching power and stuff, and he be stopping guys. But we're gonna see. We're really gonna see. People saying Devin Haney gonna have to fight JoJo on the outside. Well, the question is, JoJo used to fight on the outside himself. He was an outboxer, so he knows about that. Excellent outboxer. I said it. I'm gonna say it again. I'm gonna back up. I'm not backing down on this. I think JoJo Diaz is a better fighter than Canelo Alvarez because JoJo Diaz can do more things. JoJo Diaz is a southpaw, first of all. Second of all, JoJo Diaz, he does take sometimes too much unnecessary punishment, but JoJo Diaz also can outbox. He can fight off the back foot. He can fight on the outside, okay? But he can close the distance as well, and he knows how to close the distance many different ways. And the only way Devin Haney is going to understand how skilled this boy is when he gets in the ring with him. He's facing a really good one. He's facing a real one. Devin Haney, you facing a real one. This is a better fight than Teofimo Lopez fight, I think. Not to take anything away from Teofimo Lopez, but Teofimo Lopez don't bring to the table all them skills that JoJo bring. JoJo just need to check his stamina. JoJo need to check his conditioning. He can't be tiring. You can't be fading on fights. You can't be fading in rounds 9, 10, 11. You can't be fading in rounds 6, 7, and 8. You got to have it, and you have to keep that conditioning going. What you did with Fortuna was a great fight. Fortuna hurt you a couple times, but you knew what to do as well. And JoJo knows what to do if he gets hurt. So, Till going to have his hands full. I'm telling y'all now, man, I could put my foot down on this one. Till talking about punching. Devin Haney's talking about punching power. He need more than that. As we all see, Teofimo Lopez can punch, but it didn't stop Kambosos from bringing the pain. And I hope my boy's training his ass off, JoJo Diaz, because he should be motivated by what Kambosos did to Teofimo Lopez, and he should be looking to do that to Devin Haney, because Devin Haney only gonna get better. So if Devin Haney loses this fight, he's still only gonna get better. If he gets past this challenge, he's only gonna get better. So this is the opportunity for JoJo, and I'm not sleeping on JoJo. I understand what JoJo brings to the table. I know JoJo has a lot of skills, a lot of ability. It wasn't a fluke that he beat Tevin Farmer. It's not a fluke that he beat Javier Fortuna. He only gonna get better. So and he's been through the fire. You know what I mean? So I'm looking forward to Devin Haney versus JoJo Diaz. Really, a lot of people are underestimating JoJo Diaz. Think Devin Haney gonna outbox him or stop him. No, bro, there's gonna be a tougher fight than people think. When JoJo say I'm gonna get inside, I'm gonna fuck you up, he knows what he's saying. Okay, because JoJo finds a way to get it. There's going to be infighting in this fight. I can guarantee you that. Okay, JoJo's going to get to the inside. Okay, that I guarantee you. He's that kind of fighter. And, everybody been sleeping on JoJo. They've been sleeping on JoJo. And finally, Oscar De La Hoya and them is giving JoJo the go-ahead to face Devin Haney. That is a very, very good fight. That's a very, very good fight. We'll see if Devin Haney can pass the test. And I know Devin Haney can punch and all of that. I know he can infight a bit, too. I've seen him infight, and he's beautiful with the angles and everything. But I don't know, man. I know he's a bigger guy, too. But JoJo's a pretty big guy himself. So we're going to see. We're going to see what is. Just make sure that JoJo keep that conditioning up. And I expect JoJo and Devin Haney to to be a hell of a fight. A hell of a fight. I'm looking forward to seeing what really happens in this fight because this is a hell of a fight. And I know Devin Haney's is very very skilled, very very good fighter. I haven't even seen half of what Devin Haney can do in the ring, but still, nonetheless, to see them go through the gears and let's see if JoJo can put Devin Haney through some couple gears and see what Devin Haney can do. I'm like, I know Devin Haney, he's sturdy, he's strong, and everything. I know all of that already. So it's already about, can Devin Haney get past JoJo? Because if he can get past JoJo, he definitely can get past Karen Bosis. Because JoJo is a much more layered fighter than Karen Bosis is. He might be coming up in weight, but he's much more experienced than Karen Bosis is. So JoJo has faced Gary Russell Jr. JoJo has faced some names, man. He faced some guys in boxing so far. Tough fights. It's been in a lot of, a lot of top tier fights. A lot of not top tier fights. What am I saying? Like at the level the stiffest competition at that level, he's facing those guys. So he's battle tested. Devin Haney is gonna, this is a step up fight for Devin Haney as far as I'm concerned. This is way higher than Jorge Linares, and the reason because JoJo brings so much to the table. He has a lot of skills. He can box on the outside. He can fight on the inside. He can fight at mid range. He throws combinations. He fits his shots in. He got old school trainers training him. JoJo is no joke. It's just JoJo's commitment to boxing, staying on course, mentally staying in focus. Because he's got it all, and that's a guy a lot of people sleep on. In fact, Errol Spence observed the same thing I observed, which is that JoJo he's the real deal in boxing. Like they talk about Ryan Garcia, he's also a good fighter. Don't get me wrong. Ryan Garcia and Teofimo Lopez, and they talk about Shakur Stevenson. Nobody ever talked about JoJo. And the truth be told is that JoJo been around longer than them, and JoJo really should be the guy. He should have been the guy, but some decisions just didn't go his way. It was just decisions not going his way. I thought JoJo won a couple fights that he lost. It just didn't go his way, So, when you talk about, people talk about Dennis Ugas didn't get he didn't get the accolades that he deserved, and he finally has gotten some of them. And I hope Dennis stays hungry. Dennis Ugas, because Ugas is the guy that beat Terrence Crawford in the amateurs. Danny Garcia beat Terrence Crawford in the amateurs. Okay, and Terrence Crawford's a hell of a fighter. People don't want to give Terrence the credit for getting the stoppage on Sean Porter. Quite honestly, I give him all the credit in the world because he was controlling that fight. Never seemed ruffled. Even another thing I liked about Teofimo Lopez, he would never seem ruffled in the fight against Kambosos. He never was ruffled. The problem with him was he was getting countered off of his counters, so that's why he was kind of trying to approach the fight in a much more controlled way. And he did. When his father said, people were criticizing his father for saying, "Go fuck him up, go fuck him up," but he executed. He dropped Kambosos. He didn't get to do no more because Kambosos was tough and he knew what to do in those situations. But he did drop him. He dropped him. So we must not forget this. And this was not just Kambosos ran over Teofimo Lopez. It wasn't that. And he did make some adjustments, like I said before, to the overhand right. It's just that, you can't anticipate the overhand right all the time. So he still got caught with it. But having said all of that, you look at my boy Stephen Fulton versus Brandon Figueroa, and you saw what Stephen Fulton did. He changed strategies and he mixed it up. And that's the key in boxing. You have to mix it up. Now, if you're not ready for a certain level because you don't have the strength or whatever, you can still get crashed. Because I was thinking of forgot what his name is, from Coach Calvin's camp. Young guy, he went in with a guy who had killed a guy, I think, I think he stopped the guy and killed him. Anyway, he went in with this fighter, and the fighter beat him up pretty bad, and he was doing all the right things, but he just wasn't strong enough. So it's also about how strong and well conditioned you are. So it's a lot to boxing. Sometimes it's not time for you to step up to that level yet. And of course, People always say, old school boxing from way back in the 1900s, the early 1900s was, tougher. There were tougher guys. It was not as well regulated. I will not say that guys were necessarily tougher or less tough, because guys today, you don't even know what they do in sparring. You don't even know what their training is like. So to say that they tougher back then because they fought more, or they started, like there was a nice piece Betty Briscoe put up on Facebook with this young guy who started his pro career at 9 years old, which will not be allowed today. And he fought all the way up till he was in his teens, his late teens, and fought like 80 something, 90 something fights, And they were saying, well, the guys back then was tough. No, guys back then wasn't. That doesn't mean that a guy back then is tougher because he's fighting more fights and he started off very, very young. No, because when you look at fighters today, yeah, okay, they fight less, but what kind of fights? And when you look at the fights and how competitive they are and the kind of punishment that fighters take in preparation for those fights and all year round, the kind of regiment that they go through, you cannot say that because those guys fought so often in the past, it makes them, tougher than these guys. You can't say that. And in fact, I will say this. The mentality of somebody going into boxing, and there's a reason why less people are getting into boxing, because they realize other sports, they're easier. Okay, boxing is a very, very hard sport. And then it takes you at least 20 years before you see any kind of benefits or profit from it. Okay, you have to depend on sponsors, and you go through the amateur program, and then after the amateur program, you got to go through the pro program, and hopefully you get to a championship title to contend for a championship so you could actually make some kind of money to pay your managers and your promoters and all of that, because all of that, along that way, the promoter's paying you, but he ain't paying you big money, because the most people in boxing don't get paid the big bucks. They don't. That's what y'all don't understand. And then you say, well, why are there a lot of people going into boxing? Well, it don't pay big money. You see Floyd Mayweather making big money. You see Canelo Alvarez making big money. How long did it take them to make that kind of money? Years. It took Floyd 27 years. 27 years. At the age of 29 years old, 30 years old, he faced Oscar De La Hoya. And that's when he got his big paycheck. Yeah, he was making good money. He was making like $5-10 million, which is big money. But his big payday came with Oscar De La Hoya. It's a handful of fighters in boxing today. I can count them on my hands who make millions on a regular basis. Most boxers, remember, you got to pay your promoter, your manager. You got to pay, okay? You got to pay the people who train you. You got to pay the people who may give you nutrition and all of that stuff. And on top of that, guess what? You got to pay taxes. So when you look at it, say, early in a boxer's career, the average boxer don't make $1,000 a fight. They don't even make that. Okay? So you got to think about that. Now, so boxing is a hard sport. It's probably the hardest sport out there. I'm not saying MMA is not hard, but boxing is very hard. Okay? MMA is still a growing sport. It's still developing. It's still becoming something. So you got to understand as much, and that's why you see boxers from other countries now coming in and dominating boxing. Tyson Fury is not from America. Deontay Wilder was their only really great American heavyweight. There are more coming on the way, but that's it. Because most guys going into football or some other sport because at least there they have a better chance of making money. Okay? Boxing's hard. And it's always been that way. Okay? So, and now people have more options. They can do MMA. MMA still don't pay like boxing, but the average MMA fighter makes money, much more money than the average boxer. Okay? The average boxer don't make that. I mean, you get paid. Okay? You get paid for fighting. You might get a couple $100. If you go into the pro game, you start off with what, $100, $200 probably per fight. if so much. Okay, so you gotta understand, boxing don't pay no money, as a career for most people. Okay, so when people say, "Oh, well, man, the old school boxers used to fight for a meal," well, guess what? Modern day boxers, most of them fight for a meal too. Most of them, even ones who have won championships. Okay, I've seen guys championship fights, and how much are they paid for the championship fight? Less than $20,000. And of that $20,000, they got to pay taxes. $20,000, they got to pay their manager. $20,000, they got to pay their promoter if they have a promoter. So actually, they're taking home $7,000. And if they don't fight often as a champion, that's it. They may take home $6,000, $5,000, and that's it for the year. That's that. You kidding me? So you fight 2 fights a year, you make $14,000. That's no money. Okay, think about that. So if you take a U.S. dollars, that's a little bit of money. That's good money. But if you're talking, I mean, that's champion. That's as a champion having a belt. Okay, and the average champion don't even make that much. So I'm just saying that a lot of people talk about nowadays and Mayweather and stuff. Look, Mayweather's an exception to the rule. First of all, okay. And you have to be a superstar in boxing. You have to be a superstar in boxing to make money. And as like I said, I could call them on my fingers. I can call how many of them actually cross $1 million, in fights that actually make more than $1 million. So it's just a lot that people just don't understand when we talk about the past and the present. And a lot of people take a lot of things for granted. Not to say that the past fighters didn't have skills and abilities. Some of them were all-around fighters. And then these exceptional fighters would meet each other and stuff like that. I'm not saying no to none of that, but what I'm saying is you have to respect the sport and where it's come from and where it's going to. And what I like about it is now we're having these crossover things. So now we have. I'm gonna talk about that fight next. Um, what's it? We had a triad boxing, triad fighting, where we had boxing versus MMA in a triangular ring, and this was on Thriller. Thriller put this out, and it's interesting. I watched it. I watched the heavyweight fight over the weekend, which ended in 1 round. um, but by and large, the MMA fighters actually won that event, so that's very interesting. Um, the guy who got knocked out by Anthony Joshua, what's his name? I forgot what his name is. He actually was in that event. We'll go through that event in the next one of these features today. So, yeah, what you need here, we're gonna get out of there. So that's why Stephen Fulton beat Omar Figueroa. Um, Omar Figueroa needs to work on tweaking his forward progression, but also fighting off the back foot. So we'll see what happens. I don't know. He's a big, strong guy. But Stephen Fulton pulled that fight out. I really like Stephen Fulton. I like his attitude. So I'm hoping that he can get that fight with MJ next. And when he unifies that to get because the WBA title, Omar Figueroa had that, but he lost it. So hopefully he unifies with MJ, and then he goes for the last belt. I think. Oh, does MJ have the other 2 belts? I don't know. But at super bantamweight, that would be cool. People talking about maybe now Inui moving up to super bantamweight and facing him. That would be cool as well. But I'm backing my boy Stephen Fulton all the way to the end. I really like him. I like how he's just developing his game and just taking on any challenge. Faced a lot of undefeated fighters, a lot of good undefeated fighters as well. Stephen Fulton. So he's going through the fire, and I love it. And we'll see if he stays around for a very long time. If he'll move up probably to featherweight, maybe even face Gary Russell Jr. before Gary Russell Jr. retires. That would be cool as well. But I love Stephen Fulton. He's got the right attitude. They call him Cool Boy. And he really is a cool dude. He keeps a cool level head. And I can't wait, man. I can't wait to see what he brings to the table in the future. But he's been facing some really good fighters, man, and he's been prevailing. So he may have a rematch with Brian Figueroa. I'm sure he's gonna come out better, and probably get the win even better. He's only improving as a fighter, in my opinion. I love to see him. I'm a fan of his. So we're gonna see how Stephen Fulton progresses as his career goes on. I like him. He breaks it down straight. He's like Tank. They can have all the hype around him as much as they want. He's gonna stay focused. The key is to stay focused, and I think I just looking forward. The sky's the limit for him. So that's basically what I got for Stephen Fulton versus Brandon Figueroa. Very exciting fight. We had some really good, exciting fights this weekend, didn't we? And we'll talk a little bit more now about the Triller competition in my next video, which you guys can look out for a little later on tonight. I'm gonna catch you guys later. What you need. Out.